Good morning, doctor. Welcome back.
Good morning, Venkatesh. Nice to be back with you.
Awesome.
Today, I would like to speak up a little bit so that you can hear me. Can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Very good, very good.
Very good. So,
Yeah.
our discussion today is around navigating midlife crisis. And it is something that all people who have gone through midlife at some point or the other have in their lives. Uh, it is an important part of the wellness of both the individual and the family to manage that time, which can either be challenging or an opportunity. Yes. So, over to you, doctor.
Yeah. Thank you, Venkatesh. Now, today we are looking at midlife crisis. Hmm? It appears a little mundane on the one hand, and it appears otherwise on the other hand. So nobody knows exactly what is midlife crisis.
Right.
There is a crisis and there is a midlife, but then how do the two join is the issue.
Correct.
And how do we navigate, as Venkatesh said, we have to navigating the crisis and the midlife and
Correct.
see it through.
Correct.
And to see it through and how to see it through without losing one's productivity or career movement.
Right.
So that's the trick. You know,
Correct.
you can let go of one another and make a mess of the other. But we have to have midlife. It has to be there. Without midlife, there is no life. And there is a crisis, and that crisis is affecting everybody around you. Your parents, your children, your teachers, your professors, your everybody. So
Right.
everybody is going through this crisis,
Correct.
if not directly, at least indirectly, because you are the player. You are the dramatis personae,
Correct.
and your midlife crisis has to be managed in such a way that others will not get into crisis.
Correct.
So this is the real trick of midlife, and
Yeah.
let's see how we can negotiate this, how we can move ahead in spite
Correct.
of the difficulties and so forth.
Yep.
Yeah. Any comment, Venkatesh?
Yes. No, I think a very important point you made, even before we go on, is anyone in their midlife has actually a very large ecosystem around them, quite often dependent on them. You have kids who are
Right.
not yet fully out of the nest. You have senior parents you are likely taking care of, or at least, they are not yet, they are not completely independent. You have your own work quite often at its peak. So, midlife is a time when lots of people can get affected by one's crisis, like you said. Yeah.
Right. Right. So here you have to understand the meaning of the word aging.
Right.
We don't have to necessarily define it because we are not
Correct.
appearing for examination in sociology,
Correct.
but we should know what is aging.
Correct.
And that is very self-evident, but most of the times it is not self-evident to the person concerned. Others know, but the other person concerned doesn't know. So this
Correct.
is where the crux is. And then that aging has to be understood and tackled in an open manner. In
Correct.
an open manner. You cannot
Correct.
just withdraw and then say, I'll let the aging takes over and I'll wait till the aging is over. It
Right.
doesn't happen that.
Correct.
So what does it really mean? So
Right.
aging is a sum of all changes with the hmm,
Yeah.
passage of time. Yeah. It's a sum of all changes, mind you. It is not just one. It is not just your glucose level in the
Physical.
blood.
Correct.
Yeah, it's not just your some allergy problem or something. It is a conglomeration of all factors that affect your body, mind, and soul. Yeah.
Correct.
So period of time eventually associated with functional impairment. By the way,
Correct.
functional impairment happens.
Correct.
Although you may appear to be the most self-sufficient and forward moving,
Correct.
there is always an impairment. For
Correct.
some level or other, there is always an impairment. However strongly you deny the impairment is there. Others can
Correct.
see it.
Correct.
And you may often many times don't want to see it. So that
Correct.
impairment be accepted and
Correct.
managed.
Correct.
Yeah. So you can't celebrate impairment, and nor can you
Deny.
completely negate it.
Correct.
And Venkatesh, any comment on that?
No, it's again a very, very important point, doctor. I think the point that this all starts with the cumulative effect of many, many small changes that are happening, all of which are sort of together impairing you. One. And second, like you said, that it is not just about any one physical change, it is about the composite of mind, body, and soul. Right. And
Right.
that's actually where we start the discussion around midlife crisis. Yes, absolutely, doctor. Correct. Acceptance of
And
that,
yeah,
acceptance of that is the sort of starting point, that it does, all of this does emanate from the fact that you have to accept the aging and the functional impairment that comes with it. Yeah.
right, right. Now here we see a slide which talks about the traditional Indian Bharatiya way of looking at life, the
Correct.
compartments of life.
Correct.
And each but there are four compartments assigned to us by the
Ashram.
seniors and
Correct.
knowledgeable people, and they broadly divided life into four ashrams. The ashram is not a physical ashram with a hut and a brick and mortar or something,
Correct.
but it is an ashram is actually a derivative of ashraya, leading to ashram. Ashraya is to take refuge in,
Correct.
and that has to be taken refuge in such a way that these four functionalities of the ashrams are retained and augmented.
Correct.
So this is ashram, which is not different from the ashraya, but
Right.
derived from there.
Correct.
And they had made arrangement for a vyavastha. Vyavastha
Right.
is a arrangement.
Correct.
And this is what you see in four ashrams.
Correct.
Broadly, before I ask Venku to take it back again, there are
Right.
four ashrams. On the extreme left, you see brahmacharya.
Correct.
Brahmacharya means, a person is celibate, and he doesn't indulge in any pleasures and any mischiefs or anything. You concentrate on learning. And
Correct.
what do you learn? You learn scriptures, you learn sociology, you learn yourself, you learn anything that is possible to be learned is
Correct.
brahmacharya.
Correct.
Brahmacharya eventually would lead to the next one.
Correct.
But then this brahmacharya normally goes around up to teenage.
Right.
And once you come to teenage, you become a grihastha. There is little provision for any mistakes in the relationship, because the relationships can go totally wrong.
Right.
Especially in teenage, when there is a confusion about the hormones and the other functionalities and the environment and peer group and innumerable things that keep changing,
Correct.
and that is happening in grihastha. And
Correct.
this is again thing that is very complex, and it has to be digested and manipulated by you.
Correct.
And this will go on till the end of this playful,
Ashram.
aggressive life of up to teenage. Then once you become an adult,
Then you are in
you
Grahastha. And then,
yeah,
yes.
grihastha. Then finally vanaprastha. We'll come to vanaprastha a little more in details later on.
Correct.
I've held a couple of seminars only
We
on
can do
vanaprastha.
sessions on, yes, vanaprasthashrama. Correct.
And that is the most difficult part.
Correct.
Vanaprastha means you leave everything and go to the vana, go to the forest. But
Correct.
it is not that easy. You can't just one
Correct.
fine morning got up and take a train or a bus and then go to
Correct.
the village or something. It doesn't happen. But this is an in-between stage, and then you end up the whole thing in sannyasa.
Sannyasashram. Correct.
Yeah, in today's world, sannyasa in the way that is described in scriptures may not happen, because
Correct.
you cannot leave your family and go.
Correct.
And that is as good as negation, abdication of your duties, and then to seek refuge in divinity.
Correct.
Now, Venkatesh, I leave it to you to elaborate on this. This is a
Correct.
very important thing, in my opinion.
Yes. No, I think as a setup for the further discussion on midlife, I guess there was, via scriptures, an appreciation of the fact that there are four stages in our life with four roles. And these four roles, you have to play each one of them differently. The transition from one role to the other is one of the more difficult things. In each one, from brahmacharya ashram to grihastashrama, from grihastashrama to vanaprasthashrama, even from vanaprasthashrama to sannyasashram, which might seem like they're just an extension of one thing, they are not. All of these are points of, you can argue, crisis. Like you were saying, moving from teenage to adulthood itself is a form of crisis, right? Teenagers are always in that flux. But
Right.
no less is a guy trying to move from grihastashram, or seeing the closing, as you can see, grihastashram ending and vanaprasthashram looming, is when midlife crisis happens. And quite often that transition is the most difficult one, is why there is quite often a crisis. Yeah. So that is how it connects to our topic on midlife crisis.
Right. The interesting point about these four ashrams is
Right.
that our sages and munis and rishis and noblemen said you cannot jump to the next ashram unless you fulfill your duties of the existing ashram. It's a very
Correct.
tough proposition. It's a very tough proposition. The Rishi says, learn, there's no problem there. And the Rishi says, okay, become a grihastha. Even that may be managed. Okay, it doesn't matter. I do mischief and I play around and I make mistakes and so forth. But then what next?
Correct.
What next?
The
You can't
transition
simply
from
say,
grihasthashram to vanaprasthashram, one could argue, is one of the toughest, because the
yeah,
grihastha is actually all about responsibility. And
right,
how do you continue to complete your responsibilities while moving towards detachment is the toughest aspect of midlife crisis.
right. Here again, one can run seminars on art of letting go.
Correct. We have done that. We have actually
Very-
talked about that as well in the
Yeah.
past. And we'll continue.
And
Yes.
here they have tried to define these stages in their own way, different ways. The
Correct.
American Association of Physicians
Right.
has a particular way of defining, and then the Ayurvedic uh, seniors, who have seen life through, they
Right.
have their own definitions and so forth. But by and
Right.
large, we can say that middle age, adulthood, middle age by itself
Right.
is the time of life that lasts from about 40 to
To
about
65.
65. This is
Correct.
a very broad kind of a definition.
Right.
And some people question this. For example, there is a proverb which says that life begins at 40.
Right.
And they say, Johnny, what do you mean? At 40, your next stage of life is going on, and it will go on till about 65. The
Correct.
time of the life that lasts from 40, mind
Correct.
you, to the age of 60.
Is
This
middle
is one
age.
definition.
Correct.
Then, according to me, these stages gradually merge into one another,
Correct.
and you can't suddenly, say at the age of 40, I'll do this, I will do that. Whereas you have to gradually pave the way for your doing that.
Correct.
Hmm? So even life begins at 40. It's equally true that life ends at 40 in that aggressive commercial sense.
Correct.
Many of
Correct.
us believe that, that life begins this manner
Correct.
will be more powerful, more responsible. There will be more blood sugars, there will be more ECGs, there will be more anxiety, neurosis, and so forth. That is a different way of life.
Correct.
And that begins at 40.
Correct.
And that also it ends at 40 because the previous
Previous
brahmachari
phase
ashram.
of previous phase of aging not yet being visible. Quite often in your 30s,
Right,
aging is not yet visible, right? But by
right,
40s, you can begin to see, your muscles don't do something they used to do, or your mind doesn't do some of what it used to do, even at 40, not even at 50. Even by 40, you can begin to see the reductions or the functional impairment you talked about begins to become
right,
visible. Yes, doctor.
right.
Yeah. And therefore,
So,
yes,
today's session, we will broadly see not the changes that lead to, you know, uh, giving up or something. We will
correct,
see where midlife can be defined as such. But some
correct,
of these things, as we said, the defined midlife, whereas the practiced midlife may be at variance each other. But
correct,
then it is there, as
correct,
Venkatesh said. When one starts, another ends, and then how does it end? It's like
correct,
the baton relay race in sports.
correct.
In sports, there's a big field of about 4 to 5 participants, and then they take turns to give on, a
Receive the
baton
baton. Correct,
to the guy, and so forth. And you cannot give away the baton unless you have completely taken charge of the baton. This
correct,
is where the problem is. You
correct,
know,
correct,
if you even if you miss it by an inch or so, you have lost the game.
correct,
So you have to give, allowance to that,
correct.
and that
So
that's where we
therefore,
have to.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I think, sorry,
Yeah.
just a time check, doctor. I think now we are sort of at the midpoint. So
Hmm.
the midpoint of our midlife presentation. So no,
Right.
so I just wanted to bring you down to this slide, just giving you a sense that we are at the midpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many of the things that we normally talk about in middle age
Right.
tend to sort of go into sannyas or
Right.
vanaprastha. Here we
Right.
are not looking at it. We are looking
Correct.
at midlife where you are running a fully responsible executive life or business life or whatever, and
Right.
you are neck deep into all difficulties and complicated lifestyles and so forth.
Correct.
And that midlife is what? Is it giving up something or taking charge of something? So, for example, your blood sugar level of whatever, 80 or something, at the age of 45, could be different depending upon whether you are entering that phase or you are exiting that phase.
Correct.
This
Correct.
is where the internal clock and internal adjustment mechanisms for the individual will have to be defined and understood and also communicated to others. Now, you are at this stage, you are fully surrounded by all the B's and B knots of life. And
Right.
this challenge crossroads are the ones that we have to negotiate, as we
Correct.
saw.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. So broadly speaking, somebody says, just like it's not right to say life begins at 40, it's not right to say joy of getting older. Now, this joy of getting older, it's easy for somebody to say from outside, but
Correct.
if you are the concerned person, getting older is no longer a joy, it's a pain,
Correct.
and so forth.
Correct.
So that it's a relative perception of the time graph that you have to
Correct.
appreciate and practice. Next
Correct.
slide, please.
I think the operative word here is gracefully, right? You have,
Yeah,
and gracefully comes from acceptance. You have to accept that you're
right,
aging. You have to accept the limitations that are beginning to appear. And that's where the challenges are coming from, but you can't deny them. That's, I guess, what we are
right,
trying to say. Yeah.
right.
I
Next
think
slide,
this is a
please.
very, very important slide, Doctor. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, here is the difficult part. In midlife, it is a time to simplify your life. Now, in modern life, it's exactly the opposite that is happening. You know,
Correct. Exactly. That's the paradox. Your life is
yeah,
most complicated at midlife, but you have to start the process of simplifying, is the big, big
right.
message to my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. For example, you buy a Ferrari at the age of 45. Are you
Right.
doing the right thing? You are not doing the right thing. That itself is a question mark.
Correct.
Somebody said, oh my God, the Panditji said, the Guruji said, the Muniji said that you simplify your life. And then outside
Right.
you are sitting in Ferrari and going for a round in the national park.
Right.
So what is it? Are you simplifying your life or you are complicating your life?
Correct.
And 90% of our life at this stage in today's world, mind you, in today's
Right.
world, it's the contrary to what simplification is.
Yeah.
And people are there around you. The thing, worst thing is, even if you want to simplify, if people around you will make it complicated.
Correct.
you know.
Yeah.
And so it is not your own perception, it is
It
the
is a real
others'
thing. Yeah.
environment.
Yeah. The
Yeah,
complications are real. And the clutter, if you can call it that, is real. At midlife, you're
right,
cluttered with both responsibilities and all of what's happening around you is maybe at its most intense when you are at midlife.
right. Good. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
So, broadly speaking, depending upon your attitude, your
Right.
value systems, midlife can be a crisis or it can be an opportunity.
Correct.
You can start attending all complicated ceremonies and so forth, and at the same time, that itself is complicating your life, so we get disturbed and so
Correct.
forth. So
Correct.
your mind is oscillating between giving up and taking on,
Correct.
and depending upon what's important at that point in time, you either create a crisis or you create an opportunity. The next slide, any correction, thoughts on that, Venkatesh?
Yeah. No, I think this is the crucial part, that as much as it will mean starting to detach from things that are going to move on. So, for example, at midlife, quite often people have teenage kids. You can't
Right,
live your life around your kids in the same way as you did when they were younger, because they're soon
right,
going to need to be independent. Similarly, if your career is at a plateau, or some people may be lucky enough that their careers are peaking, but you need to bring in other aspects in your life, like a hobby or whatever else, that's an opportunity, right? And
right,
similarly, this
right,
is quite often when people also begin to think a little bit about religion, about spirituality a little more. And that's an opportunity, right? Because
right,
you're not as physically involved with your children or job, maybe, or at least you're better at it than when, let's say, you had a 2 year old crying in the middle of the night when there was no time to think about anything else. So that's the
right.
opportunity. But yes, like you said, you can view it as, oh, I can't do exactly what I used to do 10 years ago. That's the difference in lens. Yeah.
Right, very true, very true. So in this context, there is another saying, age is just a number. There are people around you who keep on egging you. They say,
Correct.
do this, do that, go there, go here, and they say, oh, it's only, your age is only a number, no? So
Right.
they are egging you on to get into more complicated lifestyles.
Correct.
At the same time, it is you are biologically you are not okay with it, and
Correct.
you pay a price for it. You pay a
Correct.
price for it in coronary artery problem, your diabetes, your lipid profile, your anxiety neurosis. Now, anxiety neurosis is a new norm in the new age,
Right.
and nobody is willing to accept that.
Correct.
But it's there, and it may not be just a number. But anxiety neurosis is more common than sort of any other factor that you can see. At this very moment, I am talking to you, or I am
Right.
with you, and I got anxiety neurosis lurking at the back of my mind.
Correct.
And it is true for Venkatesh, it's true for everybody, all Tonys and Johnnies and Dicks and Harrys.
Correct.
So age is not a number.
Correct.
My submission is age is not a number, it will never be a number. Age is a mindset. Age
Correct.
is a clarity of mindset, and there you have to sort out things. You'll see it's sorted out. You'll see it's well sorted, well
Correct.
grounded.
Correct.
All that it doesn't happen. Those who talk about sorting out are totally unsorted.
Correct.
So there is a contradiction within yourself
Right.
and contradiction vis-a-vis others
Right.
surrounding you. And you start wondering, what is it? What am I
Correct.
doing? I'm
Correct.
sitting here with Venkatesh and talking. So somebody else will say, why are you wasting your time? Your son has to go and build an empire. Let him go and build an empire. You'll say, oh, that's the same. You say, oh, is he supposed to build an empire?
Right.
If he's not doing it, they'll say, oh my God, you are lost out. Look at your
Right.
neighbor who's driving that Ferrari,
Correct.
you are not climbing the ladder and
Correct.
so forth. So you're wondering, what is this self-doubt? Am I doing the right thing?
Correct.
Am I doing the right thing in the right manner? Or
Correct.
am I dealing with the right people? And you
Correct.
will never get an answer, because apart from all this, there are answers which you may or may not agree with,
Correct.
which may not be, and so forth. So
Correct.
self-doubt is the big problem here. Self-doubt. Self-doubt is
Yeah.
there. Yeah. Any comment, Uncle?
Yeah, no, middle age is absolutely like you hit the nail on the head about self doubt, because there is doubt about, how much to let go, how much to take on, how to deal with your inadequacies. Should you, if things are going well, also there is a bit of self doubt about whether you should just, press ahead, or is it a time to actually use that as an opportunity to rebalance. So, doubt is actually almost that's where the midlife crisis is all about, right? It's about, for the first time, you become also more aware of your mortality. For many people, that's when they realize, oh, I have only 20, 30 years left, or
Yeah.
whatever number you want to put. Till when you're younger, in your mind, you always think it's infinite. I'll be alive forever. Sort of broadly, that's your
Right.
thinking till, in your 20s and 30s. But by
Right.
this time, you can begin to see that, being a senior citizen is now 10 years away, as an example. So,
Right.
absolutely. And this is what it can lead to. People can, yes, doctor, it
Yeah.
can,
So if you're not sure, hmm, you get anxious, and then with anxiety, you see no light at the end of the tunnel,
correct,
and you think you are moving in the right tunnel, but you're somewhere going in the wrong tunnel,
correct,
etc., etc. Now there
correct.
are infinite
It can,
numbers of factors hmm, that will cause anxiety, and it will lead to depression. Any unfulfilled and
unresolved.
unfulfilled kind of thing will lead to depression, and
Correct,
many times people commit suicide and so on.
correct.
So suicide, by the way, suicide
That's it.
is not this, since teenage suicides are there, old age suicides are there, you know.
Correct. It's there at every stage. Yeah. And each one has its own characteristic, but quite often it's
Yes.
linked to,
Yeah. The next slide, please.
yeah.
Now,
This is
whatever
the
it
last slide.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, and this too shall pass. Now, you should know that the midlife crisis is not there forever, you know.
Correct.
And midlife crisis is a crisis, and it is midlife. It will be gone. The crisis element will be gone, and
Midlife
midlife also
element
will
will
be
also be
past
gone.
you.
Correct.
So you'll wonder, looking back, for example, I'm 81.
Right.
Looking back, I wonder whether I'm doing the right thing or not, and the doubt will remain till I cross, say, 85 or 88 or 89 or whatever.
Correct.
But that is going to pass.
Correct.
So this too shall pass. Next slide, please.
No, this is the end. This is the last slide. Doc.
This is the end. Okay, fine. So there are various other aspects that can be looked at, and we'll keep looking at them, because our series, as Venkatesh will explain to you more, relates to lifestyle changes, behavioral changes. We are not
Correct.
interested in biochemistry; we are interested in behavior.
Correct.
And so we are moving in that direction. Venkatesh, now you take over and share
Summarize.
your wisdom.
My
Yeah,
wisdom. No, no. This is supposed to be
yeah,
on your wisdom.
everybody's wisdom. Yeah.
No, so I think what we did today was to just actually set up midlife crisis. We didn't, as always, we have not been prescriptive, or doctor has not been prescriptive. The idea is to say that midlife is a natural point for confusion, for doubt. It starts with the process of aging having reached a certain tipping point. Aging is a continuous process, but the accumulation of all of that begins to show up in middle age with the first signs of functional impairment. And what that simply means is by middle age, it's the first time that you become aware that age is actually catching up, and you are not, you can't do some of the things you did when you were younger. That's part one. Part two is that it's actually when life is at its most cluttered and complex, on career, on work, on family front. No part of the grihastashrama agenda is over. Everything is still on, right? You still have children to get out of the door, in terms of them flying the nest. You still have your work on, you still have to provide, you still have to earn, you have possibly dependent parents. All of that put together, midlife is not a time when simplicity is obvious, but it's also the first time when you have the opportunity to start thinking about it a little. And you can either treat it as an opportunity or you can treat it as a crisis. uh, it has very, very direct linkages, as we will discuss in other sessions, to spirituality, to a balance. This is the first time you can start to introduce those into your life. During the early parts of grihastashram, you are in takeoff phase, so there's not that much of a chance to do them. Whereas by the time you reach midlife, it's time to start preparing, at least early on, for vanaprasthashrama, as we have discussed in one of our earlier sessions as well. Yes, does that make sense, doctor? As a summary.
Absolutely, as always. Thank you, Venkatesh,
Thank
for
you,
your wisdom.
doctor.
Yeah.
Not my wisdom.
Good,
Summary,
good.
summary of wisdom.
As
Yeah.
somebody
Okay.
said, wisdom and stupidity are nobody's monopoly. You can
Yes.
be wise and you can be stupid. You can be both, and
Correct.
nobody's monopoly and so forth. Anyway,
Okay.
so thanks again, Venkatesh. We
Thank
look
you.
forward
See
to
you
the
next week. Take care. Thank you. Bye.